Joker, 70s movies. Avengers Endgame, I'd probably argue, is like 80s science fiction movies references. You know what I mean? Particularly Back to the Future. They also reference like Time Bandits and all these other ones. Captain Marvel, 90s action movies. Spider-Man Far From Home, 2000s Disney Channel movies. You know what I mean? So it's like all of them are covering spectrums of...
Equally, all is good.
Yeah. Well, for me, I like the 70s one significantly more than like those...
The Disney Channel? I think it's the same level to me. Same level, bro. Yeah. Martin Scorsese and Xenon Girl of the 21st Century.
Yeah.
Zoom, man.
Yeah, man.
I don't know.
Also, I mean, which is really ironic that this movie is so identical to like Taxi Driver and shit like that. That now we have this whole Martin Scorsese and Marvel conversation happening simultaneously as this movie. So
which I consider, if I'm being, let's just talk about it. Why not? I think that's a non-story, if I'm being honest, man. I don't know what people expected for Martin Scorsese to say about the MCU. It's not changing my perspective on Martin Scorsese, and it's not changing my perspective on Marvel movies or the MCU in general. My point of view doesn't get changed, and cinema isn't just this one genre or one style or one era of movies. Movies can change and develop and evolve and still be quality. I just hate this idea, like I told you a couple weeks ago on this podcast, of pick a side. Which is it? Indie art house movies or blockbuster movies? I'm like, no, I don't have to pick a side. I can love Star Wars with all my heart and still love A Ghost Story or love Scorsese 70s films or love old school awesome great movies or love modern indie movies and be a champion for those movies equally as much as MCU. I can love the MCU as much as I love A24, which I do. Or I can love Martin Scorsese as much as I love Kevin Feige or James Gunn. Like, I think it's fine. Like, this is a non-story in my opinion, but whatever. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, listen, bro. Like, we're talking about Martin Scorsese here.
He's 77 years old.
Well, it's not even that. Like, if there's one person who gets to say like what he feels about movies and not getting any ridicule,
he can say whatever he wants.
It's fucking Martin Scorsese. And by the way, people got to understand. You know, for all you Marvel heads who are going at Marty here.
To be fair, I haven't seen that many. I've seen a few.
I've seen it all over my Twitter feed.
I haven't seen it. Okay.
And it's the same fucking people too. And we gotta talk about that one of these days. You know what I mean? Like
I haven't
same people who claim to be these critics, but they only watch like 3 or 4 fucking type of movies or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So,
now I want
you know
who
what I'm talking about now, right?
I kind of do.
Yeah.
I think I do.
And I hate that, man. We're talking about Martin Scorsese. This is the man. Besides his filmography aside, put the filmography aside, there's been no single filmmaker who has been more instrumental to the restoration of more silent movies, of more classic movies, more foreign movies than Martin Scorsese has been responsible for. No filmmaker. I would put Martin Scorsese next to Roger Ebert when we're talking about the truest cinephiles in the world. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I could get if you disagree with his assessment. I don't agree. You know what I mean? I like Marvel movies. We both like Marvel. We all like Marvel movies. But damn it, if he doesn't like Marvel movies,
that's fine.
Leave him alone. Yeah. So I don't know, man.
It's a non-story.
It is a non-story. And I hope this gives people the opportunity to really understand what impact Martin Scorsese has had on cinema. And you know, it's funny, too, because the same people who are like, Martin Scorsese, you just old and out of touch. They're the same people who regularly go on whatever platform they represent and be like, you know what? They'll say this like it's an intelligent point, you know? Oh, Marvel movies, you know? Not really movies. It's like a Marvel television show, you know? Like, they'll say that, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, okay, like, you're already discrediting. I don't even agree with that, you know? Like, movies are movies, damn it. So I don't know, man. I'm over it. Yeah.
But I kind of like your argument, RB3, going back to Joker, that if anything, Joker is introducing the 70s vibe and the Martin Scorsese vibes and Taxi Driver and King of Comedy to a modern generation. That's kind of a good point. I never really thought of it like that.
I love it. And
because I'm a big proponent of that.
Yeah,
sure.
And you know that's part of why I really enjoy. I mean, I talk about Tarantino pretty much every episode, but that's why I enjoy him, because a lot of his movies give you a great window to go into other movies. Literally, each song on one of his soundtracks are usually from another movie. So in watching one of his films, you literally get, just from the soundtrack alone, you get 20 other windows that you could go into and explore just based on the music or just based on the shot references and stuff like that.
Yeah, it almost kind of reminds me, and obviously I'm reaching here, but whatever, this is what I do, I reach.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of when I see reboots and remakes or pre-sequels or whatever they're called now of movies in the past taken to the modern era, and people hate that. And obviously I get why you hate it. It's whatever, it's repetitive. I understand the criticism towards it, but at the same time, I've always argued that good or bad, it can lead you to watch the original. And I have stressed that so many times, but a great example, and I know this is a perfect example for you, is Blade Runner 2049. You could say all the crap you want about the movie, but at the end of the day, a lot of people, went back to watch the original. Oh, I've never seen that one before. A lot of people were like, you know what movie I've never seen? Blade Runner.
Yeah.
They went back to watch it just because that one's coming out in theaters, and you're like, oh, I should probably go see that. A lot of people said the same thing about Joker. Or maybe I should see Taxi Driver. I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
There you go.
That same thing people have said about MGM's filmography.
Yeah.
Yeah, they literally have been remaking their same movies
you're right.
over
That's a good point.
hundreds of years.
Yeah.
But
let's go back to Joker.
Yeah.
Same thoughts? Same feelings?
Well, see, and here's also the thing too, bro. Like, going into the movie, I also was just ready to shit on it. Not with anything to do.
Wow, we went in with different eyes.
Well, see,
I went in ready to like Chronic King.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I was oh man.
Well, see, I was ready I was so hyped for it. I mean, this is probably the most hyped movie I've ever been.
Oh,
but the day before, I saw a clip on Jimmy Kimmel with Joaquin like literally cursing out the fucking DP. I'm like, this is what this movie is gonna be like. And it obviously it's a behind the scenes moment. It has no reflection of what the movie is. But it's fucking nasty, man. Like, and people go around and praising, like Joaquin, you're just in character. How, the DP isn't wrong. For people who don't understand, directors of photography, their crew occupies dozens, if not hundreds, of lighting people, camera people, grip people. So if he needs to whisper every now, I mean, that's literally part of the practice. He's doing his job in the same way that Joaquin was doing his job. So just the fact, I mean, it was, and to be fair, it was probably all stage anyway. I mean, Joaquin is probably one stage. Yeah. But the fact that people would celebrate that and champion that is fucking nasty. And same thing with Todd Phillips with the whole woke culture shit. I got
in trouble for it.
Yeah, I don't think you got in trouble. You're speaking the truth, bro. Yeah. That's what was happening. But Todd, and then even Kimball was like, oh yeah, Todd Phillips, that's this behind the scenes clip. It's fucking nasty. I went into the movie, I was like, if Todd Phillips takes his material and just does the same douchebag white guy pro shit that he does in I love Hangover. If he does that same shit with this material, I'm not gonna fuck with it. You know what I mean? And so I was ready to shit on it. So
maybe that's why you came a little bit more positive than I did. I don't know, because I came in with completely different eyes. Yeah. I never saw that clip, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. It was nasty to me, man. Yeah. And I just think that all of that is not a Joaquin thing, is not a Joker thing. It really, all of this whole controversy leading up to days before, even to Todd Phillips going up at the premiere and be like, I'm not going to say any words, I'm just going to let the film speak for itself. It just all felt like the most douchiest fucking thing. And I wish I didn't have to say that right before we're talking about his movies, because like I am going to do a lot of praising on the Hangover stuff, But that's ridiculous. All of the things rolling up to the next few days before the movie came out was just ridiculous.
Sure.
So,
but the movie itself.
I dug, man. I really dig it. So I can't. Did
you rewatch it by any chance?
No, I didn't. Okay. I'm just scared, man. I'm scared, man. They're gonna really like put the sniper on me. Like, this dude's a suspect. You've been seeing those.
It's not even that controversial.
Bro, we have four undercover officers in our screening, bro. 4.
Well, that's completely. It's not there to shoot you for watching a movie.
Nah, man. But you gotta be careful, man. You just gotta be careful. No. They might think this dude, a young kid, little liberal. And see, that's part of what I've loved about this movie after I've seen it, is just seeing the discourse of people who some people are willfully ignoring the political message here. I think there's a very strong political message here. Michael Moore even has been on a pro-Joker campaign because he understands the leftist agenda that this movie's really trying to promote here. And I've been digging on that front too. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Because I could say a lot about that. In fact, I will, because this is a podcast.
Yeah, get to it.
Don't you think it's kind of the opposite?
No.
That will willfully ignore the people who are willfully ignoring it is kind of the majority? I feel like that's the majority of the people. I feel like most of the people who enjoyed this movie and are praising it and are going on Twitter, saying it's the greatest movie of all time, kind of don't even. They're like, "Joker's not political." He even says it himself in the movie. He says it's not political.
Oh no! If you're
that's what I'm not arguing for the movie itself. I'm arguing for the reaction.
If you literally walk out of that movie thinking that, you're the most politically inept person in the entire world.
Okay.
Like, they literally tell you from the very beginning, literally after he shoots the 3 guys, the very next scene, newscast. There's a new revolution arising. It looks like the poor people. They basically literally tell you the poor people are championing Joker because he killed a bunch of rich dudes, or they're championing the clown because he killed a bunch of rich dudes.
Interesting.
That's literally what the movie tells you from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it keeps that message rolling throughout. And people who are the reason why a lot of the fear-mongering around this movie has been going on from the big news agencies and all this stuff is because they're legitimately afraid of what a kind of rise up would look like, what kind of revolutionary thing would look like. Same thing happened when Do the Right Thing came out. This is totally different than Do the Right Thing, but same thing happened back then when that came out. People were afraid of violence because it promoted something that was outside of the mainstream consciousness, at least in news media.
I kind of disagree.
I
really do. Because this whole movie is giving you an idea of someone who if you transfer Arthur Fleck's story in 2019, he's got an issue. He's got mental issues and mental problems, mental health issues. He feels neglected. He has this odd relationship with his mother. He's completely isolated. He feels neglected by society itself. He's an older white guy, and I mean you can't ignore that. The kind of groups he would cater towards is the kind of groups that would promote violence.
So here's
towards the people who are ignoring his pain, who don't see where he's coming from. So you know what? He's going to take it into his own hands, buy a gun or take a gun and just stir shit up because he feels neglected and he's been abused and he's an angry white dude who needs to take out his revenge. This is where you I
and
can
I
make
keep
that argument.
But this is a different argument. I think you're talking more about the character of the Joker. What I'm talking about is the world, the Gotham City that they're building, this society that is so twisted and so fucked up and so poor because. And the Nolan Batman films, they attribute to the chaos because the Batman is because he's scaring people and people are going crazy. This society, there's no superheroes, there's no supervillains. It's just a whole bunch of regular people, but they're all so disheveled by the economic situation that they are willing to look at this clown figure as a symbol of justice. So that's where I think, to me, it's like the Joker isn't even. I'm not even talking about him and like when I'm talking about what the movie is talking. I'm not referring to that. Like I'm talking about the world that the movie establishes and how the revolution at the end of the movie that they are alluding to is based on the economic disparagement.
But what about everything else I said? What about the character himself?
I mean, the character is the character, and I think a lot of people. I mean, it's not like people didn't see Taxi Driver and went out to start shooting people. I don't think anybody. In fact, I personally don't think anybody watches Taxi Driver and thinks.
Didn't they?
But no.
Was.
Well, a Madison girl tried to kill Gerald Ford, tried to assassinate Gerald Ford.
Okay.
And one dude.
I could have sworn there was a Taxi Driver related inspiration.
And one dude tried to shoot or tried to get at Jodie Foster. I think tried to assassinate her too. But those are the two parallels: is the Madison girl and the Jodie Foster thing. But beyond that, I pretty much 99.9% of the people who saw Taxi Driver doesn't empathize with this character like at all.
Sure.
I think 99% of people who see Joker won't empathize with this character at all. I think as much as they humanize him throughout the story, nobody's ever going to look at
if they won't empathize with him, then why is he some sort of revolutionary symbol hero at the end of the movie when he inspires this class revolution?
Because people the same way, and I think this is what's deeply telling about this movie. In the same way that people are willing to put aside their whatever they feel about, race or whatever they feel about whatever. A lot of people trust me, there are a lot of racist people who would see somebody like a Joker character as the symbol. But there are also a lot of people, in the same way that when Trump got elected, there was a lot of people who voted for Obama 2 times in a row and then switched over to Trump because they felt like, despite the racist shit, despite the, whatever, despite all of the horrible things Trump has said as a human being, they're still willing to vote for somebody who changed the system as opposed to somebody who didn't. In the same way that all the characters in this movie champion the killing of Thomas Wayne's employees solely because they're rich and because that divide is so harsh. And that's something that a lot of people deal with in a lot of places. And I think that's something that that's what encourages violence and hatred against people to some extent. You know what I mean? Poor communities are more subject towards either gang violence in black communities or terrorist violence or white supremacist violence in like southern white communities. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm getting at is the fact that I've been reading a lot of articles and keeping up with a lot of news stories, but at the end of the day, the reality is the internet and social media has changed the world. And it's, you could argue better, you could argue worse, but there's certain things that are inevitable in society itself. And I know that's the word people keep throwing around and people are getting crazy about it. But what's happening now is there is a lot of isolation for young men. And there is a lot of stored up anger. And there is a lot of mental health issues that people go ignore because the mental health issue in the U.S. is just something that cannot be ignored. It can't.
Right.
People
and
are dealing,
and this movie very much deals with that too.
Exactly, and there's a giant stigma towards it, towards the mental health. So even he says it in the movie. If you joke about or if you don't, what did he say? If you don't joke about your mental health, it doesn't matter, or you can fake it, something like that.
Something like that.
He writes in his notebook. But what I'm saying is all these steps, like 1, 2, 3, 4. But at the end of the day, there is this kind of cloud over this community, and you can say whatever 8chan, whatever you want to say.
4chan.
4chan, 8chan, websites. Like, I don't want to use specific terminology because each group has their own terminology, but they call each other sergeants. They declare each other soldiers. And there's some sort of revolution against society which incites violence, and it's happened, RB3, a lot. It hasn't happened once or twice over the past 5 years. It's happened a lot, RB3, over the past 5 years. So if I'm a person from Colorado and I had to deal with The Dark Knight, I understand where they're coming from, where they feel like this movie might incite some violence, not because it's a class issue and the rich are going to reign over us and we should bow down to the rich, but because it's kind of about a crazy, angry white dude who feels lonely, has a crazy, weird relationship with his mom, and doesn't feel like he's seen. The way he becomes seen, RB3, is when he shoots those 3 guys. That's when he's finally becoming a star, and he becomes seen and becomes what he's always wanted to be, noticed.
Right. But see, if that's really what's
that's
gonna...
all over 8chan. But literally.
Yeah, of course. And that's what the fucked up people are. But are we saying we're going to get no movies with any characters with any flaws anymore?
Absolutely not. No, I mean, we both love Nightcrawler. I still think Nightcrawler is one of the best movies in the past 10 years.
But Nightcrawler is far safer than Joker is, for sure.
It's but it's more realistic, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's also way more. Yeah, I mean, this is a comic book movie. At the end of the day, this is a superhero.
I feel like Nightcrawler can happen yesterday and we might have not noticed.
Yeah.
Like, that's how crazy that movie is, in my opinion. Maybe that's why I like it more.
Right.
But at the same time, you're right. I don't think we should shy away from it. Yeah. All I'm saying is that there is credence to some of the backlash, not all of it, because I feel like some of it is overblown and out of proportion. A lot of the backlash is out of proportion because I feel like the vast majority of the people criticizing the movie haven't even seen the movie, and I feel like that's kind of like, come on, man. Like, if you're gonna talk shit, see the movie.
And there's a lot of critics who literally went into the movie ready to hate it, and when they came out of it, they wrote scorning reviews of it. I mean, so
all
it's
I'm
shit
saying
like
is that there is a portion of this movie, whether it's the first 2 acts of the movie, that is kind of like issues that we're facing nowadays that turn into violence, and that's not a good thing. Yeah. Like no matter how you paint it, whether you say, well, it's violence against, no, it doesn't. It's violence. Like most of it is against.
Yeah,
really, man?
Yeah. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm kidding. I was just about to name like actual. I was gonna say New Zealand is real.
What happened? The mass shootings.
The kid in California. Who ran over people.
Yeah, of course. But what the difference?
All of them were 8chan.
Every
single one.
Of course, and that's again
and
a
all
totally
of them
different.
Felt isolated.
But again, that's a totally different thing than having. It's the same argument as the video game. Shit that the Republicans keep pushing on us.
Let me clarify this for anyone who's listening.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing this.
Yeah.
I agree with you. That's the same it's bullshit.
Yeah.
Anything can incite anything.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that this is the argument that people are using.
Yeah.
I'm countering you by saying that you were saying that people were saying that they're going to rise up against the rich, and that's why the media is shooting it down.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. They're shooting it down.
I think that's
because
I think that is why. I think the media is shooting it down because I think they're
shooting it down
because Twitter people are shooting it down.
Events.
The fucking media.
Who do you?
No.
Media,
the news, Fox
news?
News, CNN, ABC. They'll plaster any mass serial killer up for 3 days in a row after he shoots 11 people. They'll plaster any white supremacists up on their news channels, put their faces, their names, and that's what incites more people. That is what gets more people wild up. Seeing that's what people want to become. People do those things because they want to become the Joker. They want to become a symbol. They want to be a martyr. And the news media literally does the complete opposite of what they should be doing. They shouldn't be showing the names of these killers. They shouldn't be showing their pictures. They shouldn't be showing videos of them doing the math, or when somebody had did a Facebook Live or whatever. I saw one of these news networks explain that. Can you believe that? That's what's doing more damage to the world than the fucking Joker. So the news, when I talk about the news and the media, their agenda is more focused towards the rich thing. And now we're talking about people on Twitter or we're talking about audiences. Sure, yes, that's the joke. Yeah, that's why people are more hesitant about the Joker, because we're in a more sensitive era than we were in the 70s or even and Nightcrawler era.
Bullshit. We're not in a sensitive era. We're in an era where a ton of fucking white dudes, angry motherfuckers, are shooting up people in real life.
Right. But the
I'm
news,
sorry, bro. That's not sensitive. That's real life.
But the news perpetuates that. The media perpetuates that.
I could agree with that.
Yeah.
But to say that
but that's the agenda.
When you
but
lose
that's
22
the agenda.
people in El Paso.
Yeah, of course.
White supremacy is real, man.
Yeah, of course it's real. I'm not arguing that it's not real. I'm arguing that the media is painting the picture of the Joker not because of the white supremacist stuff, not because of that, but because they're more motivated by they're more conservative, the more conservative leaning ideologies and beliefs. Now, of course, the backlash against seeing a white dude like the Joker going out and killing people is disturbing. It is relevant, but we have to consider what conditions in America have led to that in and of themselves.
Agreed.
And the conditions that led to that, partially the media, a lot to do with economics, and a lot to do with the shit that we allow on things like the internet and on things like on different platforms. But was definitely 100% not causing violence is movies and video games, for sure. So that's what I'm getting at.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree. And all my argument was literally based on the arguments I've heard before.
For sure.
And that there's some credence to it. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying I could see where they're coming from.
Right.
That's exactly what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
But because there is kind of a conversation to be had about that. I don't feel like censorship is the right thing to do, because that's not right. I don't feel like it should be censored, because art is art, and that's what it should do. That's what it's created to do. And if anything, I think the Joker movie highlights how media is willing to exploit these kinds of stories. I mean, if they throughout the movie they show a bunch of newspaper clippings, TV clips exploiting the situation. Sure.
That feeds into a lot of that too. So the movie The Joker feeds into a lot of different political relevant narratives too. Now that's not to say, and again, we're talking about how white supremacy plays a movie. There's I can have a whole separate conversation about that. I want to have that conversation. And
before we do,
too.
let me just bring up a question just to kind of close this chapter.
Right.
And then I kind of want to ask you a very strong question.
Yes.
About race in this movie. But is the Joker? You don't think he's the hero in this movie, right?
No.
Okay.
No. I don't think anybody should walk into this movie and think that the Joker is the hero, or will leave this movie thinking the Joker is the hero. Yeah. He's just a character,
sure.
I think. And what I think makes this very different from Taxi Driver, and what to me makes this even a more disturbing Joker movie, is that in Taxi Driver, at least he kills people who are pimps, who are thieves. Now again, there's also times where he kills in Taxi Driver where he kills a black dude, clearly because he was just ready to shoot a black dude. So that is also a case of that too. But overall, the movie The Taxi Driver wanted to paint the Travis Bickle as a good guy because he's killing pimps at the end of it, and child molesters. This movie doesn't have any kind of morally kind of gauge for the people who's dying at the end. It's just for all we know, the police officer was a decent guy. The police officers were decent guys. For all we know, the Wall Street guys were decent guys until they were just drinking or whatever. And obviously his mother was crazy, but that's insane to kill a mother too. So
it's a great argument to be made about movies. I'm going back to movies and less about the society itself or the reaction to movies. But movies itself, villains always become kind of cool and kind of popular, right?
Yeah.
You know, some of the most famous characters in movies are villains, but they're villains. Like you can't say Hannibal Lecter is a good dude. He's famous, but he's a villain. And I can argue what I like about what's interesting for me about conversations around movies is the elevation and the worshiping of villains, only to realize that they shouldn't be, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of an interesting. This is me just spitting ball because I've always catered towards villains as a kid.
Yeah.
I've always kind of picked the guys in black, and I was like, yeah, I like that guy because he kicks ass.
Right.
Where it's happening with the Joker, for example, and it happened in 2008 with The Dark Knight, where everyone walked away from that movie being like, yo, man, Joker was badass.
Yeah.
Like, man, that guy
put him on
kicked
t-shirts.
ass.
Yeah,
put him on
make quotes
t-shirts.
around him.
People
Yeah.
tattooed themselves,
Yeah,
dressed
why
up
so
as the
serious?
Joker.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the movie shows you that he was a villain and he is crazy and he shouldn't be worshipped. But if you want to do all that stuff, cool. If you want to buy Joker merch, good for you. Like, you shouldn't be criticized for that just because he killed people in the movie. You shouldn't do that. Like, bro, get out of here, man. Like, who cares? Like, I agree with that as long as we know he's the villain.
Yeah, and I think that's crucial. People got to understand that for
exactly.
sure. Yeah,
that's exactly what I'm saying.
That, yeah.
As long as you say, he's the villain, go ahead and put him on a T-shirt. Go ahead and be like, that was cool. I like that he did that. Or you can like what villains do as long as you recognize that they're villains.
Right.
That's why gray villains are always interesting because people actually see both sides.
Or anti-heroes.
But even movies like Black Panther with Killmonger, that's a perfect example of a villain where people are like, he made some really good points, but he still wants to kill like billions of people.
And by the way, and while I'm saying that Joker overall, the society that the Joker movie represents leads to like a revolutionary progression. He doesn't believe that at all. Like, he's killing people just because he likes doing it.
Sure.
And they make that very, very clear throughout the movie. He even says at one point, I didn't do this to start some revolution. I did this because I liked it. Like, basically. And that's really, I mean, that's real life. That's really what it, so, yeah.
Another example I'll give you, and I find this was the most fascinating conversation I saw this recent months on film Twitter, was Pennywise. Yeah. And I loved it after seeing it, chapter 2, and I know you didn't care for it, but I talked to Sabrina about it last week, and it's a conversation that I loved because I felt like, he's the villain, guys.
Yeah.
Like, open up your eyes, because after it, chapter 1, Pennywise became like one of everyone's favorite characters.
Yeah.
They're like, man, Pennywise is shit. I love Pennywise. And there was on T-shirts. People were like obsessed over this guy. Pennywise was the shit. And in It Chapter 2, they make it a very, very, very clear point that Pennywise doesn't just inspire racist acts like in the first movie, but also like anti-LGBT acts and homophobic act, and he calls Richie.
And then people start getting more sensitive. They're like, oh, no. Not when he was trying to kill some black people. yeah.
I was going to say it, but you said it first. 100%.
Yeah.
And then people started saying, wait a minute, I liked Pennywise. He was cool. And then there was an article talking about this whole thing, and someone said, yeah, guys, the scary demonic clown that eats kids isn't a good guy or isn't progressive.
Right.
Big surprise. Like, I like that Chapter 2 made that a point. They said, oh, you like Pennywise? You won't like him now, or even Chapter 1, where it's like, you're not supposed to like him.
I don't think anybody else supposed to like him off that.
No, but what I'm saying is a lot of people were like, I liked him. And it's like, what? He's the villain. Like, let's make that clear. If you want to like him as a villain, cool. But Pennywise is evil. And evil means racist, misogynist, all the other things just as much as eating kids.
In fact, I wish that's probably my downside.
I remember I talked about it with that. Maybe that's why I liked it, but I mentioned that to Sabrina the last week. Because I was like, that's kind of what I loved about it.
And I think that's kind of what I probably would put was one of the downsides about it. Chapter 2 is I wish they would have done more of that. I wish they would have. Obviously
they
Pennywise.
Did, man. I really like that scene when he goes up to Richie and he starts calling him names. He starts calling him like nasty, disgusting, like, ooh, I know what you do. You're disgusting. And I was like, whoa, that's low key what people say.
Yeah, I mean, I wish
that's kind of cool.
For one, I wish that would have been done with a little more subtlety. But I wish they would have. No, listen. But I also wish that they would have utilized those monsters aspects in other forms. Like I wish they would have shown Pennywise to be the abusive child woman molester that Bev imagines him to be. I wish they would have showed Pennywise.
They do. They
do, but it's replaying the same beast as the first one. And I think they could have had a lot of potential to do something different with that.
I agree. I feel like that's the studio being like, take it far, but not too far.
I wish this movie would have. And listen, I've never read it, so I'm not. I wish this movie just would have had almost no Pennywise. It could have had Pennywise almost in the background, but I wish it just would have been like Bev dealing with her abusive husband. It would have been Mike dealing with racism. It would have been Richie dealing with homophobia, but like presently in real life without all the supernatural scares and bullshit. You know what I mean? But Pennywise kind of influencing that. You know what I mean? I wish it would have just dealt with things like that.
Can I
it didn't,
talk to you as a Warner Brothers studio head?
Yeah.
That's not possible.
It's not going to sell.
That's not going to sell.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, bro, they got to. Who's the most famous? I literally just said it. Character in the first movie, if not Pennywise himself.
Yeah, but it could have been Pennywise in different characters. I don't know, man. I would have done different. I would have done differently.
Him in the clown form is the most iconic.
Sure.
Yeah. Back to the Joker.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the way they hint at racial issues in this movie, or even outright say it.
Right. Well, one of the through lines that we see in like a lot of early Martin Scorsese movies, outside of it following like this kind of white supremacist kind of stand-in character, is the interaction with black people that his characters have throughout most of his movies. Particularly in Mean Streets, Mean Streets has that famous scene where Harvey Keitel is about to go on a date with a black girl, and then he literally looks like out of the window of the taxi and is like, I just can't do it, because he's so scared of what he's going to look like being with a black woman. Meanwhile, he's literally a mobster killing people on the regular, and that doesn't seem to faze him at all. In Taxi Driver, obviously Travis Bickle, when he's first starting to unravel and he's playing with his guns, he's literally pointing it as black people are playing on TV in the same way that Joker does in this movie, by the way. There are times where there's a time when a dude tries to rob a liquor store and Travis Bickle just freshly got a new gun. He's ready to pop it off almost immediately. There's a lot of interesting moments, particularly, and there's a great relationship that Robert De Niro has with one of the black characters who was in like the cabbie group. the black dude keeps calling him killer, like, and does this little like cool snap thingy with him. But there's always, whenever the characters are interacting, there's always a little bit of a longer shot on the black character. There's always a little bit more of that because Travis is always looking at him just with a little bit more intent because his mind is so twisted that he interprets any black person to be a thug, a criminal, a pimp, or something like that. So this movie takes that concept and kind of runs it into 11. I mean, I was thinking during the movie, damn, is he like going to talk to anybody other than black people? Because literally, like the first scene after he gets beat up by the kids or whatever, he's riding the bus, he's playing with the little kid, and then that's where he first learned about his like little laughing thing, that his little laughing syndrome that is actually false. But that interaction, the interactions he has with his therapist, the interactions he has with Zazie Beetz, the interactions he has with Brian Tyler Henry, also from Atlanta. Good seeing him in this movie.
And then the final interaction he has with another
it seems like
psychiatrist.
There always is seemingly a black person getting in his way throughout the story. Yeah. And with this movie being such a subjective point of view through the Joker's POV, it's clear that that's intentional. There's no for him, he's seeing black people as the means of being disadvantaged. Where his mom is trying to right Thomas Wayne and thinking, oh, like he'll help us get better. He's seeing himself being disparaged upon the people who are surrounding him. He sees his therapist as the woman who's personally cutting his healthcare, not the institution that's cutting his healthcare or cutting his therapist time. He implies a relationship on Zazie Beetz because in his mind, ownership of a black woman is what he strives to achieve. Again, there's just countless times when Brian Tyler Henry was getting him his little files for his mom, and he freaks out because he wouldn't hand him the book or whatever. There's just so many points in this story that very directly point to his ideology. I don't even want to say subtly, but it definitely does point you in that direction for sure.
Interesting.
So I think as we're having the white supremacist argument, that is definitely, I think, a key central part in the characterization that he represents.
Yeah.
So,
and it's something that can't be ignored. Obviously, if we lost people already, we already lost them.
Oh man, if they're 30 minutes deep.
Can I say something too? That just something that I've noticed too about this same thing, a little bit more off topic, but still on a little bit on brand.
Right.
Is the idea of white supremacy and whiteness in general. And I'm rewatching the last season of Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
I've been doing it to get ready for El Camino.
Yeah.
And I've talked to you about the complexity of that show and the way they deal with race in that show.
Right.
But there's something to be said that Walter White makes a deal with the white literal Nazis.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire last two seasons.
Well, he doesn't have any morale left. His morality's checked out.
Yeah, but at the later episodes, when he starts to get deeper and deeper with him, you start to realize like there's something to be said about, man, you got to be a certain kind of effed up to be dealing with these guys. And not just that, but the fact that at the end of the day, if Walter White was black, he wouldn't be able to do this stuff. Like his whiteness allows him to
privilege.
His privilege, his white privilege allows him to do all this shit that he's already done. And it kind of hit me last night watching kind of the later episodes, like Ozymandias. I saw that episode again, which is incredible. It's very interesting because you could see the way they deal with Jesse, the way they deal with Jesse's girlfriends, who just so happens to be Latina.
Yeah.
They deal with different the white supremacy group just in subtle ways because they don't outright say I hate you because you're black or brown or whatever. But the way white supremacy takes a hold of something and raises it up as a hero, the way the what's his face's name? Landry. I forget his name. The cousin of the uncle. Remember, he has a nephew.
Yeah. Played by
Todd is his name.
Jesse Plemons.
No, Jesse Plemons.
Yeah.
Todd, right?
Yeah,
That's his name. The way that he worships Walter White as like, man, this guy's a badass. Heisenberg's my shit.
Right.
He would never do that if he was any other race but white. If he wasn't just this privileged white guy. And then obviously I can go back to I could do what you're doing right now about Breaking Bad, just about Latinos in general, because every portrayal of a Latino guy is again just
for sure.
a narcissistic sociopath.
Right.
But it's interesting, and I don't think it should be ignored. Questions like these, because it's an interesting conversation how people cater towards the Joker and Joker in general, on in a movie level, or even on an audience level, or even on a society level, where he's worshipped as this symbol. But it's the issues he deals with in this movie are economic issues that affect everyone.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating stuff, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean that just goes back to a lot of the fear that was coming out during the 1970s, particularly about Black people. You know, especially with you know, that was like the Nixon era, you know, leading into the Reagan era, where people were very, and still coming, you know, out of the Vietnam War, where people still have very harsh beliefs post Civil, you know, after the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s. A lot of people either got on their side or got completely off. You know, in some ways, the country became more divided.
Yeah.
You know, even though the right policies went into act.
And movies like Taxi Driver show
Exploit
you
that. Even to the point where Martin Scorsese is saying the N-word.
but show you how this guy is side-eyeing Black people the entire film, and yet he's the villain the whole time.
Yeah.
The irony of that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Is where he's like, I was like, oh, what if that Black guy does that? And the irony is like, the stuff you do is the point of the movie.
Yeah.
And you're the violent one.
And see, not even just him, a lot of the characters in this movie.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, Martin Scorsese literally gets in the cab talking about he wants to kill his wife because his wife is sleeping with a Black dude, like on one of the floors upstairs. How twisted and fucked up Travis Bickle, for one, thinks the world is, and for two, how much people are just comfortable with that being the situation. There's also to say too, I would have loved if the Joker would have had a scene where Joaquin would have went into like a porn shop and like took a girl, or took Zazie Beetz to like a date to watch a porno like he does in Taxi Driver. That to me is just one of the funniest like moments I think like ever, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's crazy. I think all of the representations that Joker is emphasizing are really just more extreme versions of what we saw in like those old Scorsese movies.
Interesting.
But I think the one that they really ramped up to a 10 was the underlying fear of Black people.
Interesting.
That those movies represented as well.
Yeah, my closing thoughts on the movie itself, I kind of go back to what I said initially. I enjoyed the movie, but I feel like my expectations were a little too high, and it didn't reach that.
Yeah.
And then again, like I said in the review, go make sure you guys check it out if you haven't already. We reviewed this movie right here on the First Cut YouTube channel. I said that it was the predictability and the surface level kind of ideology just really didn't do it for me, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I wanted a little bit more complexity from a character like the Joker. And what I got was a sad, abused kid who got beat up and feels left out. And I was like, dude, I've seen that everywhere and so many times. And I don't know, I just kind of wanted something else that's not as like literally check mark, like on Mindhunter or something.
Yeah.
Like literally the Joker is a character on Mindhunter. You know what I'm saying? Like all the things. It's like, bro, I've seen this on Mindhunter like every episode.
Right.
You've seen the show, right?
Yeah, I love Mindhunter.
Yeah, it's a great show, but it's like, bro, I get it. You have issues. Like, I don't know. I just felt like you're not as complex as people give you credit for.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, it's like I wouldn't give it necessarily points for originality.
Sure.
But I think the cinematography is wonderful. I think the
all that
music
stuff,
is
man.
great.
Absolutely,
Acting's great.
the acting is incredible. All that. He's gonna get nominated. All this stuff is true.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And Todd Phillips did a great job directing. And we're gonna get into his movies after we go to break.